Hey there, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. Here at Total Potential, we are having a little sibling chat between myself, Cole, and Jake. And we're really excited to sort of open up and have a little bit more of a vulnerable conversation around what we see as the gift of darkness. Obviously, right now, the world is experiencing a new and maybe different type of darkness than we've ever experienced in our lifetimes. And when we're in that, it's really, really, really challenging to see the light on the opposite side. But for the vast majority of us, there will be light. And so we'd just like to share some of our experience, some of the things that we're thinking through and experiencing right now, right alongside of all of you. So thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to talking about this. I think it's a topic that, just the word darkness alone, I think sometimes can be scary, but, I'm excited to kind of work through it and not only understand it, but then also just, like you said, all light, the end of everything is light, but a lot of times it's the pain and the struggle that we get through that makes that light so great. So,
Absolutely.
so it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah. So I wanted to start by sharing this story because it really, it's stuck with me now for almost 20 years. So this would have been like in 2002, I think. Our dad was going through confirmation program to become Catholic. And that happened as the catalyst for him going through that was a car accident that I had been involved in. And it was a, super traumatic, life-changing experience, not only for myself, but for our whole family. And so I was home from spring break and I went to one of these confirmation classes, and we were sitting around this round table, and the nun that was leading this class asked everyone to go around and say what it is that they see when they pray. And I didn't have to think for 1 second about that, but I happened to be the first person at the table to answer. And I said, well, when I pray, I see darkness. And she looked at me like I had 2 heads and 7 limbs and like I must be a crazy person. And then all these other people continued to go around the table and talk about these really like gorgeous paradise type visions that they would have when they prayed, which is beautiful and lovely. And it's not that I couldn't understand that, but the thought that she thought that I couldn't see God in literally pure darkness was really surprising to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's very surprising.
Because I had known God like in the blackest. I had known that connection, the light, the whatever, like in the most brutally dark time of my life. And that's not unique to me. I mean, you, I'm sure, have experiences like that too, Jake.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that is I think if you really dig into that, especially on a spiritual side, I would say that people find their connection spiritually in a really dark time of their life.
Yeah, often, for sure.
For me, the big thing was my transition from my hockey career into this next phase of my life that I'm in now. And, after going through a couple of years of some really, really dark and tough personal times for myself, that's also where I started to have a relationship with God. And, I would say it was very similar to what you just said. You find it in kind of the low of the low.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy, and it's an awesome concept to think about, everything's perfect and I want everything to be perfect. And, and the idea of the sunshine and all this beauty. I mean, obviously that's what we all want, but sometimes the reality of it is that you have to be okay to dig into those really dark and painful times, because that's what makes that light or that beauty. That's what makes it so awesome to experience, because you know what the other side of that feels like too.
Right. And for us, it's interesting because before this particular circumstance happened, I was a super faithful person. I had a really strong faith. I really um, felt connected in that way. But the darkness makes it different. Like there's no way to go through, the worst possible moment of your life and not have some experience that either draws you in or it can push you away. And that's kind of what I'm worried about. What I see right now is that fracturing instead of the coming together.
Yeah, and I think too, Cole, if you kind of reflecting back on when you did have your accident, what's so interesting about that too is just the age that you and I were, when that all went down, and when that happened to you, we were younger people too. So
Yeah.
To have the perspective of life, and at that time of our lives, all of these things were happening. You just got in your accident and were, not going to be able to go back to college that semester, and I was leaving to go be away from home for the first time in my life. And it was just this weird bubble of life that we were in, of like, what is going on,
Totally.
and it opened your eyes to everything, to drinking, and just decision making and all that kind of stuff just started to really become the forefront. And maybe decisions that I don't know if saying equipped is the right word, but at that time of your life, it's like you're just trying to kind of be freewheeling and go with the flow. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was like, man, like we just got hit with some major reality, like, punch right in the gut,
Right. And Jake, the thing that you've said that has resonated so much with me is just the fact that at some level, suffering is necessary.
For sure. For sure. I mean, if you think about that, I mean, it's like, why do we put ourselves in positions, just like, I'll be specific to myself, but it's like every time you go to the gym, or every time that you write up a workout or go for a run, you're creating struggle for yourself. That's the whole purpose of it, is like, is am I going to be able to get through this workout? Because the reality of it is, the awesome part about living in this country is the struggle that we go through is much less than some other parts of the world, and some other areas where people are really, really struggling.
Right.
So for us, it's like we sometimes have to manufacture our struggle just to make sure that we still know we can get through it.
Yeah, but think of how critical that is when then you meet a time like this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this, just in complete honesty and candor, this time sucks. It's
Big
a
time.
huge shift in every person's life. There's a lot of financial uncertainty. There is tons of health and wellness related uncertainty. And the fear that crops up for people, I wouldn't negate for a second, because I would be lying if I didn't say that I wonder about those things too. But I think the unique thing with this particular situation is that it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you live in, what religion or God you pray to. Like, it literally does not matter. Every single human is experiencing this darkness together. And to me, even though there's so much suffering in that, there's also like an insane amount of beauty and an insane opportunity for compassion. I just, this is unique. This is a different time. And my greatest hope is that, we come out of this stronger because we didn't have to manufacture the struggle. We met it. We, showed up every day and did the work and came through it. And instead of only having eyes on ourselves, we actually looked at our neighbor and said, "Hey, what do you need?" Or, "Hey, this group over here who I know like has way more struggle than I do. What can I do to help you?"
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that's the mindset, right? I mean, I think it can kind of go, it's almost like a journey through some of that too, of like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm okay.
For sure.
That my family's okay. And then from there, now who can I reach out to and help? And, I think what's really interesting about this time is just even on the communication level with your own family, of trying to work through just anxiety and maybe, quick to be, to get to, a point of like being angry and having to sit down with like your young kids and say, "Hey, I'm not overly sure why I feel this way."
Yeah.
But instead of saying something that's going to hurt your feelings, I just want to remove myself from the situation, gather my thoughts, and then, reintroduce myself back into the family once I feel like I can function without having this being in this weird mind space.
Yeah, totally.
And what's been super revealing for me on that is like, well, we should really actually handle every situation, every encounter with every person like that. Of like, if we truly don't feel like we can be in a spot to, bring something to the table or to show compassion and love to somebody, then we should just be honest with them and say, "Hey, I actually need to remove myself right now because I'm feeling some anxiety or some anger or whatever, and I don't want to say something to you that I'm going to regret."
Totally.
That might be really uncomfortable, but you can stumble away from that and still have a relationship with that person, even though you had that kind of weird encounter with them,
Well, and it came with a ton of integrity and a ton of vulnerability, which, so many people shy away from that word, being vulnerable, which is, the biggest crock of bullshit ever, because, the facade of not being vulnerable is, you can see through it instantaneously. So the thought that you'd want to be anything but vulnerable is interesting. But, if you have those encounters, just showing up like as you are, whether that's, your finest day or not, like there's so much integrity in that. And there's never going to be somebody who looks at you and says like, "What is wrong with that person?"
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one, especially for, for guys. I think about that a lot is like, what is it really like to be a strong, male figure for, just say, for my kids.
Right.
And I think if they see, that, oh, Dad, if he's sad, he feels okay to cry. And if he's this way, it's okay to have these kind of range of emotion, instead of like, I gotta be this hard, tough, whatever the perception of a man is. I think it's really like you said, like to be vulnerable that takes a lot of courage.
Oh my gosh, you got to have some serious balls to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, to show your kids exactly who you are and be totally okay with it and say, "Hey, I want you guys to our job as your parents is to not to tell you how to be, but to help you flourish into what you are."
Right. Right. What you already are. Yeah.
What you already are, what God made you to be, It's like that's our job. It's not to, say to my son, "Hey, you got to be this tough, nasty, mean, whatever." It's like, well, that might be the exact opposite of who he actually is.
Right.
Yeah. So what good am I really doing him if he's sensitive and if he's caring and, all the things that you'd want your son to be. It takes a lot of courage to really step out of that mold of like, this is what a man is,
Yeah.
Like, not overly sure who defined that.
Right.
But I think that's something that we can define for ourselves,
Right. Well, and that's one of the other things that I think is so really it is a gift of darkness, is that, you know, whether you're in a situation now where we're in our homes, work is different, like life actually slows down. I'm guessing for you, Jake, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, but you know, the period that you went through, life was still happening. But my experience has been that, like, in the dark times, like, somehow, whether life is moving or not, it gets really super quiet.
Oh, big time.
And
I
that
mean,
silence, like, not around you, but the silence that just is from in my experience has been one of the greatest gifts of experiencing dark periods, because that silence is so revealing, and it gives like this emptiness of an opportunity to change whatever you want.
and it gives you the feeling. I think it's like a feeling of like, I know I can't live feeling this way.
Yeah.
So I really, at that point now, I only have two options. It's either stay where I'm at or start moving and figuring it out.
Right.
You know, and I think that's at least for me personally, that was the big thing that kind of was the catalyst for me to start working on myself and start to think about, okay, like what do I want the rest of my life to actually look like? You know, and the unfortunate part is it took like a 4 or 5 year period for me from the day I stopped playing hockey till when I really started to think about this stuff.
Yeah.
But those 4 or 5 years was exactly what you said. It was just this like going through the motions, really no thought at all, just like this suffocating feeling of emptiness and alone, and like kind of you're on this little island by yourself, you know, and you're running out of food and water as the days go by. You know, it's a really horrible feeling.
It is a horrible feeling, but you're right. It only leaves you with, you know, two options. You either stay there or you change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the teammates and friends that I have that have made that transition from sport, you know, it's weird because it's a lot of different personalities, but almost everybody has the same experience.
Right.
And you know, the awesome thing about it, or the cool part about it, is when you come out of the other side, and when you come out of that darkness into more of the light, you know, that experience is also very similar for most people too.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of similarities there, and there's a lot of things that you can use to have connection with people.
Right.
You know, and then from there, it's like it just kind of keeps growing and growing and growing. It's like you know, we have the opportunity to help one person, and then they are on fire for it, and they go out and help with somebody, and now all of a sudden it has this kind of domino effect where there's more people that are caring about others than not. You know,
right.
That obviously would be the ultimate goal of anything. I would hope.
Right. And I think there is, you know, this is an experience of the collective consciousness. Like, whether or not you believe in whatever religion or however you believe humans are connected, the fact of the matter is, in our conscious experience, like, all of us will remember COVID-19. So that is part of our collective consciousness. And, you know, one of the things I keep wondering about, because really the last time something like this happened was the Spanish flu in 1918. Like, 9/11 wasn't like this because the whole world wasn't sharing the same viewpoint on an issue like that.
Yeah.
But I have wondered, and you know, technology is so different, and the way we connect around the world is really so different. But I've really wondered, like, after that pandemic, did people find more of their similarities? Did they feel more connected? Did they feel like the neighbors in the other town were, oh yeah, they're exactly the same as we are? You know, I'm like every day just praying that the lesson of this is to see our sameness. because the division between people, all it does is cause us suffering. I'm currently reading a book called The Book of Joy, which is a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who are two highly respected and revered spiritual leaders. And the Dalai Lama, who is Buddhist, his understanding, and I, after reading this, could not feel like this is more true. His understanding is that by seeing the separateness in people, so you live in this place, or you have this color skin, or you are in this socioeconomic group, it actually causes us, like our own self, suffering. Because when we see the differences, we see that difference in us. And that itself hurts us because we're not different. So every day I just am praying and praying and praying, like, please let us see that we are all the same, and just we are so much better together than we are separate. And that's something that, all of Total Potential is founded on, right? Like, if our family units are better together, the whole world is better.
Yeah. Well, I think too, Cole, on that point, I mean, that's where it really, if you get real granular on that also, it's like, hopefully what this creates is more some internal dialogue for people too, of like, okay, if I've had these thoughts, or if I've had these viewpoints, or if I've, whatever it is that's holding you back personally, because I do feel like if you have hate in your heart, or if there's, something, a group of people, or whatever your thought is, you're projecting it out in the world, but really you're holding yourself back.
Totally.
More than anything. So it's like, to go out and to be that person, it's really kind of getting back to the priority of, like, you have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And those thoughts and those thought patterns and all that stuff. And why do I think the way that I think? Unpack all that so that you can be that best version of yourself, right? And then from there, then it's like, okay, now I don't need to go out into the entire world yet. I still have this kind of tight-knit tribe that's either my family, or a team you're on, or a group of people that you're very, very close to.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, then you can start to expand, but you don't have to have this thought in your head of, like, I have to go from, like, 0 to 10,000 and have to go and take care of the entire world. It's like, how do you just back it up into something that you can actually measure and control, and say, okay, I can start on myself first, because you have to be authentic in everything that you do.
Yeah.
So from there, then it's like, okay, now how do I be the best spouse I can be? How am I going to raise my kids to be people with compassion and love, and have some of these qualities that, I'm working through now as an adult? Speed up that curve for them.
Right.
Then from there, it's like, then you can go into your community, or, it's just like kind of baby steps. But if you did that, and if you did that for the course of your life, I mean, the amount of people that you would impact is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying that, Jake, I'm thinking to myself about, doing that self-work, and some of the most important practices that I've used to really, I would say the biggest pattern that developed from that car accident I experienced was a really deep-rooted victim mentality. Like, this had been done to me, and I had no control of it. It wasn't my fault. There was a lot of things. And the thing is that wasn't untrue, except for that all of a sudden I was a victim, like, in a lot of circumstances. Like, oh, well, my work people don't treat me the right way because I'm the victim of their, clique or whatever it is. And so that was, like, following me everywhere. And I really am super cognizant of the fact that if I hadn't been working my ass off the last, lot of years to really understand the patterns that hold me back. This particular instance, this COVID-19 would land on my lap and I would be like, oh, see, that was coming. This kind of stuff always happens to me. I'm always exposed to blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the circle of the pattern that I was in. And if I hadn't really been doing a ton of work to see what my pattern was, I'd be sitting in that big time right now.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So what are some of the practices that have been like the most important for you?
I think for me that there's kind of two big things. It's my kind of the first hour of my day. I think that's been a huge thing, if you want to call it your morning practice or morning ritual or whatever you'd want to say. But I think the big thing there is it's that first kind of the first thoughts that go through your mind, or the first thing that when you wake up and it's like, okay, what am I going to actually do today? Or what am I working through or whatever? So, having some kind of a practice in the morning for me involves a little bit of movement. It involves prayer, and then it just involves some just basic planning for my day of like, this is my intention. This is what I want to have happen. And then the big thing for me, the one thing that when I was kind of really stuck and like just sitting there, like, how do I even start trying to figure some of this out? And maybe just with having an athletic background, the one thing that I went back to was the one thing I can control is I can get myself back in shape.
Yeah.
And what it is for me now is, I think, kind of going on this topic of darkness, it might sound a little bit weird, but for me, I actually feel a lot of darkness when I work out, and I actually welcome it, because a lot of times it's like when the workout gets really hard, or like last fall when I did that marathon, when it gets to be in a point where you really want to quit, I mean, that idea or that thought of darkness, it floods in.
Yeah.
And it's what's awesome about it is it gives you the opportunity to use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Of like, you get this internal dialogue going like, that's not stopping me. I'm not going to stop because of what my mind is telling me I need to do.
Right.
And so you kind of build this armor up of like, okay, I've had all this positive self-talk in the morning. I've set my attention out to, to God of like, this is, what I'm trying to do to serve you. And then get into these super tough workouts that all of a sudden you're like, you come out of these things and it's almost like a little bit of an out of body experience. Like, holy crap, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah.
You pair those two things together, which is 2 hours total of my entire day, which all of us can find 2 hours in our day.
Yeah.
And those two things are like the non-negotiables, have to happen, because it just sets up the rest of the day to experience that light.
Right.
Or if you get slammed with something that's like unexpected or out of the blue, it's like, okay, I can navigate through this. I've felt this before, actually 30 minutes ago when I was in that workout and I wanted to quit 5 times.
Yeah.
I can process this. I can work through it. So those are the two practices that are, non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah, I mean, we have shared that for sure, that the physical practice part, that has been huge. And actually kind of going back to that victim mentality that I was just speaking about, the physical practice there's been a couple of other, visualizations and breath work and stuff I've used to release that. But honestly, the physical practice has been one of the most important things, because I, was told a long time ago to never run again. I would never play sports. I kind of got this laundry list of things I should never do. And so for a long time, I didn't do them. But in the last couple years, I've just decided, I've been back to the fitness routine for a long time now. But in terms of like that meeting that darkness and meeting the fear, I've just decided that like I write my own effing story. Like no one else is going to author the story that I'm living. And so, yeah, a doctor told me a long time ago that I shouldn't do whatever, but he doesn't live in my body or know how I feel or whatever. And should I make smart choices? Like, should I not be running marathons? Probably. Like, that's not in my 5 or 10 year plan. But I can run. I don't have to run 26 miles, but I can run. And so I'm finding a lot of courage, honestly, in that physical movement and just like kicking fear in the shins and being like, you know what? You don't live here. Like, you are not writing my story. I'm writing my story. And the stronger I get, the more I feel that way. It feels super empowering. So that physical movement has absolutely been essential for me. And then the other thing is kind of two parts, really, because I always had a pretty like deep prayer practice, but now that prayer, meditation, breath work, to me, that's all kind of wrapped into one thing, and that is a non-negotiable daily practice. But the thing about the turning in and really navigating darkness in general is that it's super uncomfortable. Like, you see yourself in a quiet space with nothing but your own thoughts running through your mind. And it's gnarly sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's so, everything that there is to learn is like sitting right there for you.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I think that, just the way that we're wired with kind of our fight or flight or just to stay alive is if it's uncomfortable, it's the natural reaction is to not deal with it.
Right.
Let's move away from that feeling of, oh my gosh, this makes me feel a way I don't like to feel.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the biggest challenge of it is like that's where when you start to have that feeling of like, okay, I am exactly where I need to be thinking, and this is exactly what I need to be leaning into.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, it's really easy to say that.
Yeah, it's super hard to do it.
And there's sometimes where you're really in a flow state and you're feeling great about yourself, and it's like, okay, bring it on.
Yeah.
And then there's other days where it's much more challenging, but I think if you're aware of it, that's what makes it be something that's able to, allows you to make the decision you have to make of like, okay, even though I know this is really going to suck, I might have to make this phone call, or I might have to reach out to this one person that did X in my past, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you gotta have that kind of that one little like take a big deep breath and have that weird feeling in your stomach, and then all of a sudden you did it and you accomplish it, and it's like, wow,
yeah.
I just took 10 more weights out of that backpack that I've been lugging around for the last however many years.
Right. Totally. Yeah, so, it's absolutely true. Yeah, I'm really hoping that there are going to be people during this time who this darkness, this obstacle, it's going to be like a freaking mountain. And that might be because they actually get really sick. It might be because somebody they love gets really sick. It could be because they go into financial ruin because of, the state of how things are. There's a lot of, some people's obstacles in this will be humongous. But at the same time, I look back, the accident I experienced was almost 20 years ago. And I look back on that obstacle that completely changed my whole entire life. And I would not wish that circumstance on my worst enemy, but I have so much gratitude for that experience because I would not be anywhere close to where I am, which whether where I am is good or bad to anyone else, like it's absolutely where I'm supposed to be. And so did it take more than a few minutes to see that humongous obstacle as an opportunity? For sure. But the fact of the matter is that anything we have to go through or get through, we learn, we, fail, and those failures are our teachers. We experience or make new connections. I mean, none of it happens just like, whoops, there, that happened. It's like, this is, whether this feels like an opportunity right now or not, I hope that people can look back 15, 20 years from now and see like, wow, that was a super nasty, dark time. But look at what came out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what is helpful too on some of that is like if you really think about like a life mission or a purpose for your life that you're going to strive for forever, it takes away some of that like immediate gratification of like I need this now,
Right.
And when you're working through some failures or if you're working through some hard stuff, it's like, okay, but I'm on this journey and I hope to be, God willing, health wise, and that I stay on the earth. I hope to be on this journey for 50 years.
Right. Yeah, this isn't this year that I'm committing to doing this. This is me forever. Yeah.
So you might have a season of your life, like the transition thing for me. I look back at it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, it took me 5 years to realize what was going on. And it's like, if you think about that in an 80-year lifetime, 5 years is just like, it's like a blink of the eye.
Right.
So when I think about it that way of like, okay, I'm on this journey, of like every day seeking more and more and more, it's like it makes these seasons of struggle or of darkness. It's like that's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
It's a period of time. You're in it for a reason. So dig into it, get to the bottom of that hole, figure out what's causing that pain or that suffering,
right,
and then work through it.
Yeah.
And what's awesome about it is once you get through something like that, now instantly you have connection to somebody else in the world because there's somebody for sure who is going through the same thing that you just came through.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how those people suddenly pop up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the part of it that's so cool. And that's where it's like, I think sometimes we get caught in this like idea of like, I just want to be kind of like a 5 or 6 every day. I don't want to feel many highs. I don't want to feel many lows. It's like that. In my perspective, I just don't think that's the human experience.
Sure.
I think we're supposed to feel the ones or the zeros. And then, the awesome part about that is then when you hit the 10, you actually get to really, truly enjoy it.
Right.
And those 10s aren't going to come along every single day, but when they do, it's just like, wow.
Yeah. And neither are the ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In yoga, and I mean, a lot of religions talk about this, but in yoga, one of the points of the philosophy is around contentment. And it's kind of along those lines, Jake, of like sort of feeling or understanding your highs and lows, but you aren't that high and you aren't that low. You just are. And being okay with what comes, whether it's good or bad, you're still okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's cool. It's an interesting time. I think it's a good time for hopefully, like we've been talking about, for people to really kind of look past themselves and like how you can be of service to other people, and huge positive in that. Even though this is for most everybody on the earth right now, this is kind of an experience that nobody has really faced yet.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, to even look back on this a year from now.
Yeah.
But looking back on it from 10 years from now, that's where you're really going to see what the arc was. What was the point of this? What did we learn? How did the world change? How did companies and healthcare and governments and individuals and families and tribes, how did they change? And, for some, it's going to be really super uncomfortable. But I think for a lot of us, we're going to look back and really appreciate what this time taught us.
Yeah.
And that's my hope for as many people as possible.
And what I'd say, and, this is something that I've been telling myself every day, and what I'd say to anybody that asks me, do whatever is in your power through this thing to come out of it better.
Yeah.
As opposed to coming out of it worse.
Yeah.
And, I think it's, again, everything that we do, it's all about action. It's like either we take the action or we don't. That's kind of the, typically the way that I think about it. It's like, well, I know what I have to do, so you either do it or you don't.
Yeah.
So what I would encourage people to do is just on a daily basis, just make those commitments to yourself and then do them.
Yeah. Even if it's one thing.
Yeah. Just do something that's in your power, in your control, because none of this virus or being locked in homes and whatever like that, all that's out of our control.
Right.
So figure out something that you can control and then go at it with everything you got every single day.
Yeah. And then be okay letting go of the things that aren't in your control.
Yeah.
Like it's really interesting. My John, my husband, is not a homebody at all. And as soon as we kind of found out that the quarantine sort of situation was going to be happening, I really worried about him. Like, what is he going to do? He would never sit at home all day, every day. And I've been so fascinated watching him because now that that's just not a choice, man, he's like loving life at home.
Yeah.
Which is so cool to watch. Like, that would not be his choice. And if he could control it, he would leave here in a heartbeat. But it isn't. So he's just let go of it and is embracing time at home.
Yeah.
It's been kind of cool to watch, but
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to have this conversation, and I hope it just gives some perspective on the pain of now is definitely temporary, even if temporary means a couple years. But the gift of what will come out of the darkness will likely be, pretty magical.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great day. We'll talk soon.